Hello, welcome back to my channel and a special welcome if you're new here. My name is Jen and this is Jen Clayton Beauty. We test out a lot of new makeup on this channel. I love indie makeup. It's my all-time favorite, and today we're actually trying a palette that I have been impatiently waiting for since I purchased it. It did take a while for it to come in and ship. It was more on a pre-order status when I did place the order for it, and it is from my all-time favorite indie brand, Unearthly Cosmetics. And that's this beauty right here. This is the Dreamer palette. This was actually their holiday release. They released a whole kit of products, including a highlighter duo, as well as some bullet lipsticks and the Dreamer palette. I chose just to pick up the palette because I bought a single highlight from Unearthly as well. So I skipped out on the highlighter palette, and I am not a bullet lipstick user, and I'm on a lip no-buy for 2024. So I decided to go ahead and skip those products and just go ahead and order the palette. This palette. Whew, she is absolutely incredible. I'll go ahead and insert swatches I'll go ahead and insert close-ups for you. The packaging was beautiful. The outside carton was a nice heavy-duty box with some foam on the inside to keep the palette safe in shipping. It matches the cover of the palette, which is this beautiful woman with this icy white hair and this beautiful pink and purple color story. It's absolutely beautiful. The packaging from Unearthly is always a 10 out of a 10. There is a mirror in the palette, and the color story is so pretty. It's pinks, it's purples, it's some neutrals. We have some beautiful cool toned shades, some multi-chromes. This color story, as soon as I saw it, I knew that I had to have it, and it matches perfectly with the packaging. They just always kill it with packaging, color story, formula. Like I said, Unearthly is my all-time favorite indie makeup brand. This palette swatched absolutely beautifully. The mattes are buttery soft and pigmented. The shimmers, the multi-chromes, the duochromes, beautiful. These two silvery shades, the shade Up Drift and the shade Dream State. These two right here are so beautiful. This one, Drift, is more of a purple leaning silver, and then this is just a true gorgeous silver, probably the prettiest silver I have in my collection. I cannot wait to put this palette on my eyes. And then I did decide to go ahead and pick up the single Unearthly highlight in the shade Spellbinding. I love that they sell their highlighters individual as well. That way you can kind of pick and choose the highlights that you want to get. This is a multi-chrome highlighter that shifts from white to gold to pink. So I thought that it would pair beautifully with this palette. So we're gonna test out the Spellbinding highlighter as well. I went ahead and did my base makeup. Down in the description box, I will link all of the other makeup that I'm wearing. I obviously have not applied a highlighter yet because we're gonna test out Spellbinding. I'm going to pick that up on my highlighter brush. This swatch so beautifully. It's so shifty and sparkly, and we're going to pop that on. Ooh, oh my goodness. That is so pretty. Do you see that? Pink to gold shift. That is so pretty. It just melts into the skin. It doesn't sit on the skin. It's not glittery. It's just sparkly and wet looking. Oh, it's so pretty. This is one of their low light highlighters. I actually have their low light highlighter palette, and I use it all the time. It's actually one of the first things I purchased from Unearthly. Just everything about their brand is just amazing. So there is the highlighter Spellbinding. I'm going to go ahead and zoom you in for the eye look. I am, of course, going to prime my eyes with my MAC Paint Pot in Painterly. I always use an eyeshadow primer, and the MAC Paint Pot is my go-to. For me, I find that it's the one that really keeps my shadows in place and prevents them from creasing. I just tap that in. I think what I want to do for my eye look today is I think that I want to use some of the neutral shades in the palette, and then I'm thinking of popping either this purple shade Slumber or Engulf on my lower lash line. So kind of a neutral look with a pop of color on the lower lash line. These shimmers in this palette, it's so hard to decide. Part of me wants to use every single one of them, which obviously can't happen, but I will be using this palette a lot. I reach for my Unearthly palettes all the time. I'm going to start with this light pink shade here called Soothe, and we're going to use that as our transition. So picking that up on a fluffy brush, I'm going to apply that in my crease and a little bit above my crease. I chose this color because it's one of the lightest mattes in the palette, so it's perfect for a transition shade. And it's also going to bring in just a little bit of color to a neutral look. That applied and blended out beautifully. So you can see that I put that shade in my crease and brought it above my crease. I do have slightly hooded eyes, and I want to be able to see that pink kind of pop through above the crease shade. So in my crease, in the crease itself, I want to use this shade called Clouded. Now in the pan, it looks gray, but when I swatched it out, it's a little bit more of a gray purple, which I really love. So I'm going to pick that up on a fluffy brush, and we're going to focus that right in the crease. So I'm kind of going to tap that in, so I'm not going above the crease at all. I'm staying right in the crease. Look at how pretty this is. It's a cool toned purple gray. Really, really pigmented and just a really beautiful shade, and it's pairing perfectly with that pink. Again, tap, 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 and then windshield wiper motion to just really pack it in the crease. And then I'm going to quickly go back into that first shade, Soothe, that pink, and I'm going to use that to blend those two together. And I just want to make sure that that's nice and opaque above the crease. Then I'm going into this deep, cool toned brown shade called Night Owl, and I'm going to pick that up on a little bit more flat brush so that I can pack that in the outer corner to deepen that up and add that depth, but also bring in a little bit of smokiness. Focusing that just on the outer corner. I'm gonna bring it under my lower lash line just a tiny bit. This is so pretty. It is a raisiny brown. I really like it. It's just not your typical brown. It has a little bit of a maroon base to it. So it's a little bit more smoky, a little bit more dreamy than a typical brown. It's layering over those other two mattes like perfection. I never have an issue with Unearthly mattes. They're always really, really good. And with that fluffy brush back into Soothe, picking up a little bit more of that pretty pink, and we're going to just blend the edges. I'm going to apply some NYX glitter glue to my lids before we go in with some shimmer. This is another thing I use every time I do an eye look. My MAC paint pot and my NYX glitter glue are absolute staples for me. Now I want to use this shade Drift, that silvery purple shade for sure. And then I'm also thinking that I want to use the shade Fantasy. I want to do those two shimmers, and then I'm thinking Float for the inner corner. So let's go ahead and start with the shade Fantasy. I'm going to pick that up on my finger. This is kind of a pinky purple multi-chrome with a black base. So I think it's going to add a little bit of depth to the lid, and I'm going to focus that on the outer about 3/4 of my lid. Ooh, this is, look how pretty that is. It's shifty from purple to pink, but with the black base, it gives it a little bit more of a neutral vibe. It is going on beautifully, as always with Unearthly. I'm definitely able to build that up and get a little bit more opacity. So that shade applied beautifully with the finger. I am going to use a pencil brush to pick up that shade Drift. I really, really love this shimmer shade. And I'm going to put that on the inner portion of my lid. Look at how pretty this is. It's so smoky. It is silver with a purple base, similar black base to this pink shade here, Fantasy. And I'm just going to pull that over and blend it with Fantasy. This is also picking up beautifully with a brush. So you can either use your finger or your brush and you get perfect application with these shimmers. Oh, I love that. It's so smoky and dramatic. And then, like I said, I'm going to pick up the shade Float, and I'm going to use that as my inner corner highlight. You could even use the shade Dream State, that really pretty silver. There's a couple of options for inner corner, which I really appreciate, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Float. It's kind of a light pink, taupey, tanny brown shade. It's really, really beautiful. And it would actually be pretty all over the lid. If you wanted to do a full neutral look, you could definitely go in with the shade Night Owl that we did in the outer corner, Float as your shimmer, and then you could even pop in some of that cool toned gray purple that we used in the crease. But that is so pretty as an inner corner highlight. And then I think for my lower lash line, I'm going to use Slumber. Now, Slumber is a deep, dark eggplant with a little bit of shimmer. You can see just the tiniest bit of sparkle in shimmer. I'm going to buff Slumber on my lower lash line sticking really close to my actual lash line. That is so pretty. Oh my goodness, I love that eggplant purple. And then I'm going to go back into Fantasy, that multi-chrome we used on the lid, picking that up on that same brush, that pencil brush, and buffing that for a little more shimmery lower lash line and to kind of diffuse that out a little bit. So here is the completed look. Let me go ahead and do some mascara, liner. I think I'm going to pop on some lashes, do a lippy, and I'll be back to share my final look and my thoughts on both the Dreamer palette and the Spellbinding Unearthly highlighter. So here's the completed look using the brand new Unearthly Cosmetics Dreamer palette and the Unearthly Cosmetics Spellbinding highlight. I have not gotten dressed for the day yet. It's chilly, so I kept the sweatshirt on, but I want to go over my final thoughts on the palette and the highlighter. So let's go ahead and start with the highlighter. Again, this is their single low light highlighter in Spellbinding. I mean, it speaks for itself. It's absolutely beautiful. It's sunk into the skin. It's not sitting on top of my skin. It's wet looking, sitting naturally on my skin. I like that you can build this up if you want a little bit more blinding highlighter. And if you go in with the light hand, you'll get a little less highlight, but it is just absolutely beautiful. And I always love a good multi-chrome colorful highlighter. And I think this pairs perfectly with the palette. Now let's talk about the palette. The Dreamer palette is exceptional. It is the exceptional Unearthly Cosmetics quality. The mattes are buttery, they blend, they layer, they're not patchy, they're so beautiful, they're cool tone, they're just exquisite. And where this palette shines besides the mattes is the shimmers. I love the multi-chromes, the duochromes. Every single shimmer I used, I gasped. It was actually I audibly gasped. I mean, it looks so pretty. I love the black base of some of these multi-chromes like Fantasy. It just, again, makes it smoky, but also ethereal and beautiful. I really love this palette. This is a unique color story to my collection. I can't wait to play with this more. And I know that this is a palette that I'm definitely going to be reaching for regularly. It's absolutely stunning. It's perfection. I really, really love it. I did go onto the Unearthly website. The palette is still available as well as the highlighter. So I will link them both down below for you. I did use a discount code that I found online to save 10%. So I'll put all of that information for you as well. I'll also list my favorite beauty subscription boxes, all of the other makeup that I'm wearing if you wanted to create this entire look. And of course, discounts to my favorite indie brands, and come follow me over on Jen Clayton Beauty on TikTok. I've been uploading more on there, more tutorials, more makeup content in general, so come and follow me there. But I'm gonna rate this a 10 out of a 10, this a 10 out of a 10, and I'm so excited to have both in my collection.